Okay.
I might want to lift my camera up a little bit. Hey, everyone. All right. Let's see if we can get Steph on here.
Get Steph on here. There we are. Perfect.
Yeah. Welcome. Okay. So, quick intros. Go ahead and quick intro yourself, Steph.
All right. I'm Stephanie. I own Volante PT and Performance. Work with runners of all levels, physical therapy and run coaching. And then now working with Ellie, as you guys know, to create training programs. And now we've got a virtual race and just are trying to help runners not only during this time, but in the future with training and injury management.
Yes, great. And I'm Ellie. I'm the owner of Performance and Physical Therapy in Seattle, Washington. Physical therapist and run coach. I also work with the US AFL national team, the women's team. And Steph and I are excited about our collaboration. Tonight is our kind of our first, I think, topic dive.
Yeah, first deep dive.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk about the training plans and some of our reasoning behind the programming that we put into the training plans. And I think we're going to talk about it kind of as it flows. So each program is 12 weeks and they're based on essentially like 4-week blocks is how we went about it. So Steph, I don't know, maybe you want to start and maybe talk about how you approach that. And then I can maybe talk about how I approach that.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically in a training plan, you want to start off with being a little bit more conservative, right? So the race is going to be the ultimate goal. And you want to cycle through that so that your stress leading up to the race is not too much. So it's just like any other training program for other sports, right? You start off pretty general and then get more specific as you get closer to the first game or your first event. So for running, stress plus recovery gets you improvement. Okay, recovery is huge there. So we want to initially start off with a little bit lower level of stress and really establish consistency, not only for your muscles and building your heart muscle as well, but also just as a habit, especially with our 5K plan, it's geared toward people who have either taken a break from running or just getting into running. And so I think mentally creating that habit of getting out the door is enormous. And that habit of I'm the type of person who's going to get out the door for a walk or a run 5 days a week is huge. Yeah. And then we keep stress low so that you can recover as you become more consistent, spend more time on your feet, and you see positive changes in your joints, your muscles, tendons, and again, your heart.
Yeah. I think that highlights perfectly the way that I think too is like the consistency piece is always number one, getting somebody out the door and keeping it easy. And I think of it as like kind of what you've already described, sort of building on a pyramid. You start from the bottom of the pyramid and you work to just build a good foundation. And that's why in those first months, a lot of those runs are really, really supposed to be at like conversation pace, relatively easy paces, so that you're not overtaxing yourself and overdoing it to an extent where you have potential to risk injury or things of that nature, or even just struggle with consistency. Because I think even if you're going out really hard, more often than not, it becomes a little bit more of a hefty chore to get out there and do the run in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm working with an athlete right now who we've made a lot of her easy runs easier. And she said that exact same thing. It's like, wow, I used to stop after 3 or 4 weeks because it wasn't fun. And so I think that was the piece that her first 3 or 4 weeks were just too hard. And then exactly what you said, took out the motivation part. So now keeping those easy really builds that foundation and allows you to be motivated to keep going. And
yeah, and I think that can even be hard for some runners to do, to keep it easy. And so sometimes what I'll do as a coach is I'll program in a super easy week where they're just running like slower than all get out for that entire week, simply so that they can kind of start to feel that range of slowness. Because I think it's a lot slower than what people naturally want to be doing and what their tendency is to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is kind of a little side note too, but when I started to do that, it was like my legs were more sore after, and I complained about it, of course. But what my coach told me and reminded me that I'd heard before was that speed hides need. So I hadn't developed the muscular strength and control to be comfortable at those lower speeds, and then it was leading to under recovery. So yeah, that first month is just getting comfortable and
yeah. And that would be another reason why we also add in the walking. So there's a lot of like good science that says just walking is good for you in general. And we also know that walking can help contribute to the forces and loads of running. And so that's why with each day you're getting a fitness walk before and a little bit of a fitness walk after, as well as those interspersed 30 plus minute fitness walks to spend some more time on your feet, which builds tissue capacity and also builds that consistency piece, right? It gets you out the door, gets you moving in that direction in not such a taxing way.
Absolutely. Yeah, for those of you who may not know, fitness walk is basically just a faster walk, pumping your arms, maybe like a mall walker type situation. But it's great. You got to try it.
Holding your hand weights.
Exactly.
Not really, but
yeah. So I guess we could kind of move on to the second month. So kind of what are you? Yeah, go for it.
So the second month is ideally built with like, okay, you've built your good foundation in the first 4 weeks. And the second month now is about adding in a flavor. And to me, that's like adding in speed variance throughout the second month. So learning kind of again, so first month, like we're learning where the bottom of the speed spectrum is. Second month, we're starting to flirt a little bit more with RPE. And really that's just like playing around with your speed, figuring out where those ranges lie for you.
Yeah, I think that's hit the nail on the head there. I don't have much to add besides, I think the spice, it helps with variations and forces on your body as well as mentally. Like, all right, I get to throw something a little extra in here and get my arms pumping, my legs turning over quicker.
Yeah. And again, the consistency piece continues throughout the second month. I think if I recall correctly, on the 10K program, you might even start to see more days a week of running, more days spent on your feet. Like being on your feet and spending that time outdoors is invaluable to that tissue health, reducing your injury risk. And so that is always going to be the forefront, I think, for both Steph and I. There's always a balance of doing too much, but there's good data that shows us when you're spending more time on your feet, you are likely to be a little bit better off, especially when we're accounting for training loads. The other thing that you'll see in the programs is on the side of the programs, we've counted the minutes. And each of those weeks should be progressive until the fourth week, which is usually kind of a deload week. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well, Steph.
Yeah, so good point bringing that up. So typically, and this definitely varies, I think, from person to person, but typically we want to build a little bit, again, increase that stress gradually, and then bring it back down for kind of more of a recovery week. And again, I think depending on what month you're in and kind of what your body responds to, that could either be a decrease in intensity or volume. But most of the time, what I do is volume. So I'll drop it down by a certain number of minutes for the most part. And I think the one other thing we could point out that we didn't talk about really, because I think both of us use minutes a lot, is why we do minutes instead of miles.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people count miles per week and want to get to a certain mileage. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for joining. Minutes, I think, keep you a little bit more conservative in my experience. If someone tells you to go run 5 miles, even if they say, you know, I want you to stay at this pace, in your head a lot of times it's like, oh, if I do it a little faster, I have more time for other things, or maybe it's better if I go faster. When we just tell you straight up, this is going to take 40 minutes, I just want you to go at this effort level for 40 minutes, I think we're less likely to get in our heads and we're more likely to stay conservative. So that's why.
Yeah. I like minutes too because it's predictable, right? You know exactly how long something should theoretically take you and when it's going to be done and over with. And when we look at like adding in speed work and things of that nature, a lot of that is based on time. There are a bunch of training plans out there that will do it based on distance. So, you know, doing repeats of a certain distance. Time to me is, again, a little bit more controlled and can be a little bit more specific to the person as well. So yeah, I think the minutes thing is a little bit of a learning curve for some people to transition from miles to minutes. But once you do, I mean, I will never go back.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
So we can estimate, I think, for a lot of our runners or the individual athletes that we coach, we can obviously estimate how long it's going to take them to do approximately 12, 13 miles, however much we want them to get. So it's not like we're completely throwing mileage out the window, but just makes it, just like you said, a little more controllable.
Right, exactly. Especially when you start to get into higher volume mileage for like marathons and things of that nature. Some of that estimation will be very, very person dependent, right? So if I have somebody who's running a 12-minute mile versus somebody who's running a 5-minute mile, the time difference is going to account for that speed difference as well, which will ideally also account for the mileage.
Right, absolutely.
Cool. And then moving into the 3rd month now. Do you want to touch on the 3rd month?
Yeah, so 3rd month we increase volume a little bit more and then also start to add in some higher intensities that will, there's a couple different levels. So kind of that 5 to 6 out of 10 effort level is going to be your threshold. And that's just going to help with your endurance at certain paces and running economy or your utilization of energy. And then we kind of step into a little bit faster than that to help with your heart's power. And that's going to be kind of that 7 to 8 out of 10 range, but very small doses in there. Keeping your ability to recover intact. I think the mistake I see a lot of the time is people are in that higher zone, 7 to 8 out of 10, for 20 to 30 minutes of their workout rather than about 12 to 15 in small doses.
Yeah. I think that hits the nail on the head for me as well. A lot of the 3rd month, especially in the 10K too, is about building some of that volume, so that you're able to run 10K. And also sprinkling in more speed, and maybe even being race specific. Although I don't think our program necessarily is what I would consider race specific. So much of that is going to vary based on you as an individual and where your speeds are at, and your sort of knowledge about how to approach a race, which is maybe another conversation. Actually, I think we are doing a race like prep one at the end, right before our quarantine 5K and 10K race.
Yeah.
Which, if you haven't signed up for, you absolutely should. It's linked in my bio.
Yes, they're still open. We haven't ordered the medals yet. There's still room, and I think now that we're getting closer, it might be more realistic. So it's like, oh, now I've got 8 weeks to train, and so if you've been running consistently, it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Sweet medals.
Yeah. And we are going to talk about taper too, which you'll see in the 3rd month as well. And that'll be a whole separate topic. So is there anything else you want to add about the programming, or does anyone have any specific questions?
Yeah, let me see. I think
we have some questions to answer, by the way. we've still got those. So I was asked 2 questions by a couple of people. One was, how much stretching should a runner do? And then the other one was, what workout is going to give you the most bang for your buck when you're talking about time, trying to save time. So if we don't have any other questions, we'll jump right into those. Do you have other questions to answer as well, Steph?
No, I think I was just going to make a one comment about the programming. I think that, just like you said earlier, it's important not to feel like you have to improve and always make one week better than the next, because that's going to set you up for failure. And I think that's why we don't do a lot of the exact same workouts over and over. You'll see some variations in time, because it's really difficult mentally to just compare week to week, because you're not going to see that improvement.
Yeah. Okay, it looks like how would we discuss increasing or decreasing total minutes per week?
That's a good question.
Yeah, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so if we come back to kind of that like 10% rule of mileage, that doesn't necessarily, I think it's a good place to start for a lot of people, but when you're in very low mileage situations, that's not gonna work, right? If you're only running 10 miles a week, then you jump up to 11, then you jump up to 12.5. So, but I'd say based on their current level, I'd estimate between 10 and 20%. And then I just kind of convert that in my head to minutes. So, for me personally, when I was at, I think I was at 35 miles a week then, or whatever that equated to in minutes, I added 20 minutes of running, sprinkled in adding 10 minutes twice during the week. So that probably equated to about 3 miles. But I think that's my best answer as a general rule of thumb, but it is very individual. And then if you're doing that, you also want to keep intensity the same, right? You don't want to increase 2 variables at the same time.
Right, yeah. Don't chase 2 rabbits, right? So like first is focusing on consistency and keeping it easy, and then you can start to layer in some of those other things. So say that you're running 3 days a week at 30 minutes and you want to be running 4 days a week, you might add another 30-minute run, and it could, I don't know the math on this, it could be technically more than 10%, but that might be just what you need. But yeah, the general rule of thumb is about 10% each week. It honestly doesn't work out to a perfect math most of the time. And I would say in a real life scenario, I certainly am not calculating that for the runners that I work with. So, very individual based on what loads somebody is tolerating at any given moment. And, with some of the data that Steph and I can use through the app that we coach through, we can kind of tell if somebody's starting to falter in certain ways. So either looking more fatigued, missing workouts, maybe their heart rate's looking a little high, things of that nature give us clues as to whether or not we need to make changes to someone's training plan.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then
so that other question I think was asking about strides.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about strides?
Yeah, so in the program we listed, it says typically like 5x15s or 5x15 seconds, or maybe 10 seconds. So those are referring to strides. And strides are basically just pace pickups. So again, they vary the forces on your body, your muscles and joints, and then mentally they kind of stimulate you to go a little bit faster. So it's kind of working on a little bit of speed, but with good technique. A lot of times I tell my runners, pick it up to the fastest pace you can sustain with good form. So 5x15s just means you do 5 sets of 15-second strides, and then it has recovery time after that. So that recovery time can be whatever you choose. It could be a fast walk or a jog after, but that's going to be kind of the time you take in between your strides to recover before the next one.
Yeah. I think strides are a great way to sort of introduce speed work and again, start to play with your range. Basically, the goal of them is to like gradually accelerate, and 15 seconds is not a really long time anyway. So, most normal people aren't necessarily going to reach top speed. But the trick for me is just really like learning to explore that range, and again, apply some more explosive forces to your tissues. So you know what that feels like they're ready when the time comes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if there aren't other questions there, we're going to answer the other two questions we had, which were, let's start with stretching. How much stretching should a runner do?
Great question. Somehow I feel like there's been so much, this is like one of the biggest myths, sources of misinformation in runners. I don't know how it started, but
I don't either.
most runners,
you go to practice and you just stretch.
yeah. Just wear your sweatband and you stretch. So runners, I don't prescribe stretching to any of them. Now, there are caveats to that. If you don't have the adequate motion to run, which is also a debatable topic, how much ankle motion you need, how much hip motion and knee motion, then like, let's say after you're in a boot for a while, okay, then you probably need to stretch. If you've had some sort of injury that's kept you immobile, then before you run, let's make it symmetrical and you may require some stretching. Other than that, the runners that I coach were doing strength work, and if they want to stretch on their own, awesome. If they want to foam roll on their own, great. But we're doing strength work and we're running. I haven't run into a situation where we've absolutely needed any form of stretching, and I definitely don't have anybody stretch before their run. It's been proven over and over that that's not only not helpful to run, but it actually can impair your performance.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, you know, I think the general thought process by people is that stretching reduces your injury risk, and maybe even for some people improves your performance, and like that's not been proven, not really even in the least. And so I think, you know, when I think of stretching, I don't program any stretching in unless I have somebody who just absolutely loves it. And in which case I might program some in, but definitely not going to happen right before their run, or before they have to do some sort of explosive work. And so to me, same with Steph, like stretching is really unimportant. Like on the grand scheme of things, it's not going to impact strongly, more than likely not going to impact your risk for injury, and it's not going to impact your ability to perform better or well, or even your like longevity in the sport. So yeah, I think we can effectively say, don't worry about stretching. If you really love it, do it. That's fine. But know that you don't have to.
Right. Yes. Don't feel ashamed if you don't or you don't like it.
Right.
It's okay.
Exactly. And then the last question that we want to answer, and this is maybe this is actually a really great question. Basically, what's the sweet spot? What's the most bang for your buck? I don't know, workout or intensity, I think was the question.
Mm-hmm. So we touched. This is a tricky one, and this could get long. Obviously, very specific to the race and all that. But for distance runners, the best way to improve your speed over time is consistency with your training. So going through training cycles where you're doing that, building that foundation, and then moving into a period of throwing in some spice, working on your explosiveness from the ground, decreasing that ground contact time, and then challenging your aerobic system and your ability to clear lactate. So that's going to get you to run at a faster pace longer and improve your race times. Now, if we're going for more just strict speed, we did touch on a little bit earlier. You can talk about kind of those workouts, but other things that may contribute to improving your speed could be, and this is, I don't know if there have been studies that have showed this in distance runners, but strength training potentially, and like other strength type workouts like hill work, hill sprints.
Yeah, to improve that aerobic power, essentially. So I think this was a really tricky question because, you know, as coaches, we're constantly trying to find the sweet spot for an individual. I wouldn't even say the sweet spot, but just trying to stress them in ways that positively adapt their systems to what their goals are. I think there are some, like if you were talking about strict physiological improvements, I think you can make really good improvements doing a 4x4 minute interval session. And by interval session, I mean running hard for those 4 minutes. I think I saw that on a paper, and our friend Chris Johnson has said that before. He was there in PT. I think it's a little bit tough to put that down though, because if you're doing 4x4 for weeks and weeks in a row, there will come a point where that's not taxing you the way that you need to be taxed. And as Steph had mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, stress plus recovery equals progress. And stress has to be varied, right? Because eventually we adapt to certain stressors. So I might be really good at running my easy 30-minute run, no problem. I could do that till the cows come home and maybe not make any real changes to my system because I adapt to it. And so you have to also consider like how to change those stressors throughout the weeks to continue to make progress. But purely physiologically speaking, a 4x4 minute interval session is a pretty good place to say, okay, maybe I could improve my fitness a little bit, my VO2 max, things of those natures.
Right. Yeah. And typically, from what I've read, the rest period is going to be about equal.
Yeah.
To those intervals.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
A lot of that data is honestly too a little bit over my head sometimes. The physiological stuff is like a whole study in and of itself. And as coaches, we certainly have like a breadth of knowledge, and we're also physical therapists on the physiological side. But when it comes to working with a person, it almost never shows up that way. So I think like as a coach, I just want to emphasize how an individualized plan can make a really big difference to someone's circumstance. And we'll talk about coaching in another week.
The next one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there was one more question. Do you prefer morning or evening runs? I live in Texas and temps are getting really high, but I have a hard time motivating for early morning when it starts super.
Ooh, good question. So I'm in Phoenix, and there's definitely different beliefs on this. I think I heard one person say at one point that morning running was really bad, but I disagree. I mean, we can't say that black or white about anything, right? But I think whatever works for you. I went to college here too, and I ran in the mornings all the time. Now, as a almost 30-year-old, it's definitely tougher. I feel stiffer, but I just do a fast walk warm up for 10 minutes before. I do some heel raises, stuff to kind of just warm myself up, and that tends to work for me. But I knew a lot of people who would run at night after the sun went down. So I think just whatever works for you is going to be the most effective, whatever way you can be most consistent.
Yeah, I agree with that. And as a coach, I'm not typically dictating when a person should do their run. And so I would say, like whatever works for you is best. I think ideally you're not running in the mid-high heat of the day for a number of just safety reasons. Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel. I like running in the mornings. I didn't used to be a morning runner, but I do, and now I have a good routine around it, and it's nice to get it done.
Absolutely, yeah. The one thing I will say about that, if you're going super early in the hot mornings, this part is not fun, but make sure, especially for females, that you get up and eat something before, regardless of what time you start.
I was going to mention that as well.
Same page.
Eat something. You have to eat something. I mean, it's just like so many people. Well, we have a whole nother session.
We'll get into this.
But yeah, so many people want to run fasted in the morning, and I think there's people out there who are like proponents of fasted running for reasons that I do not understand. But as listed in our program, we recommend that you eat something before you run. I think we recommend at least 100 to 150 calories, and that's like minimum.
Yeah, that's for like 30 to 45 minute run. If you're doing more than that, 200 to 250.
Yeah, we'll talk about fueling in a.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. We can just talk about everything right now.
Right now. Settle in, guys. It's gonna be 3 hours long.
Awesome. Well, I hope that answered people's questions. Does anyone have any other questions? Running in the morning is hard.
It is very difficult. Yes.
Yeah, I like, you know, I will loosely say that habit of mine just started maybe a month ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Evan, I know you said it's getting hotter there too, so it's probably that might be good motivation to get going. But
yes, exactly. I hate running in the heat. I grew up in the Midwest and played soccer, and it just makes me think of the soccer tournaments in the summertime that were like all day long in that heat of the summer and the humidity and
the humidity. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, not fun. Well, great. If there's not any other questions, I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
We are going to be coming back here in 2 weeks, and I don't remember the next topic. Do you remember the next topic?
I think that one was about coaching and like when it's time to get a coach and what.
Yeah, I think sometimes people do wonder, like, when should I get a coach? Mm-hmm. So it'll be great fun for us to talk about that.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Well, if there's not anything else, thank you for everyone who is here listening to us spur on about something we love. We really appreciate your engagement. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you all have questions or needs.
Absolutely.
We are both taking new runners.
We are. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Thanks, Steph. We will see each other again soon.
All right. Bye, Ellie.
Bye. Okay. Oops. Sweet, you there?
Yeah, it's still recording, but that's okay.